Welcome to episode 214 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 16th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. I'd like to extend a very special welcome this week to listeners G and Natalie in California, Casey in DC, Carrie in Florida, Amanda in Illinois, Amanda and Erica in Louisiana, Kelly in Michigan, Courtney in Nebraska, Stephanie in New Hampshire, and Steve in New Jersey. I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can reach me either on Facebook. On Twitter, my handle is @LMS_United, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. And now for a word from our official sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I am so excited to be working with them. And now in a segment I like to call Why I Love Capstone. This week's series, friends, we are going to feature is called Informed. And this is a nonfiction series, and I'll include a dedicated link in the show notes. And there are 10 titles in this set, and I'll read from the copy. It says, Tweens and teens today are skeptical of the news, but they are more plugged into current events than ever. They don't think traditional news sources understand their lives. Give them information from a trusted source on topics that matter to them. Clear but sensitive, these titles track tough topics with nuance and understanding in a way that middle schoolers can relate to. With solid research and experts in the field to back it up, you can be sure it's not fake news. Long-form journalism at its best for the curious but skeptical middle school reader. And friends, these are informational text, and the reading level is at approximately a 6th or 7th grade with an interest level of 5th grade through 9th grade. Friends, all of these titles average 64 pages apiece. They also have a copyright date of 2021, and the titles are as follows. Big Pharma and the Opioid Epidemic, from Vicodin to Heroin. Brink of Extinction, Can We Stop Nature's Decline? The Deep State Conspiracy, Does It Exist? Guns and the #NeverAgain movement, What Would It Take to End Mass Shootings? Hate Crimes in America, From Prejudice to Violence. Immigration in America, Asylum, Borders, and Conflicts. Sexual Harassment in the Age of #MeToo, Crossing the Line. She, He, They, Them, Understanding Gender Identity, Surviving Social Media, Shut Down the Haters, and You Are Eating Plastic Every Day, What is in Our Food? So friends, I think this is a really interesting series to take a look at, and whether you buy one or two or all 10 of them, each one of them could give a classroom focus. And it would be wonderful to see how a class such as like a social studies class or current events program might be able to take one of these books and really sort of structure an entire lesson around it and inspire debates and discussions and further inquiry. But I think the wonderful thing is that you've got something that is rather compact and can give a class sort of that foundation and that starting point from which you could launch a whole series of different related investigations. So I really like how these books would sort of spark something that the students would then further their inquiry through research and, again, deepen their understanding of a topic which on the surface is very complicated and in some ways very adult, and yet bringing it into a type of an appropriateness for middle schoolers. And I trust that Capstone is going to do a great job of making sure to keep this not only engaging to our readers, but also sensitive and appropriate for their age. I am so grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 5. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for our episode, Greatest Hits Middle School, and my conversation with Angela Myers. Angela Myers, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, hello, Amy. It's nice to be back.
Friends, if you haven't already, make sure to listen to Angela's first episode, Passive Programming. It is a hugely popular episode, which has been downloaded now in 47 countries. I know listeners would appreciate if you would share with us any recent passive programs that you have been able to implement and you found popular with your students.
Well, we still do all the ones I had mentioned before, but we've added in something called water painting, which is pretty awesome. And I was a little nervous to do this. It's basically like canvases and there's little cups of water, which I thought, oh, that's going to make a terrible mess. But the kids love it. We have it stationed like on a cart and there's little paint brushes that has a cup of water and they just paint and it dries right off and next one.
Are those the Zen boards?
Kind of like the Zen boards. Yeah, they're like about, and I think I got these from Scholastic, I'm pretty sure. So they're like 3 feet by maybe a foot. And I ended up getting like 6 of them. So I have them in different places in the library because we have a ton of traffic, which is a blessing and a curse in the sense that I've always got to have things because I'm teaching most all day long. So I've got to have things for my visitors. And I always want the kids to be able to come, but also to have things to do, when they get there. So it has been a great success. Like I said, I was a little fearful. We did make a little rules, like don't make a mess, paint things that are appropriate. But the good things is they dry, so it goes off very quickly. So if there happens to be anything in the shocking realm, then that goes away. So that's good.
Well, and I think you've come up with a near perfect solution. And for so many of our students, the expressive, the ability to write on something and show the I was here, that sort of, and which is exactly why we don't keep permanent markers out. I teach high school, and the last thing we're going to do is put permanent markers out available on that table with the dry erase boards. Like I'll put dry erase markers out. I'll put highlighters and pens and markers, but you're not going to see any permanent markers out there because you better be sure that somebody is going to use that to make sure to sort of leave their mark, mark.
Yes.
Would you mind putting a link in the show notes to this particular board? Because I know there's somebody who's going to want to take a look. That would be fantastic. I love the fact that water is the issue because for so many of our passive programs, we do have to be aware of things that there are messes that come with many of our passive programming. I will say right now, I need to implement an origami station because
that's a good idea.
I have students who were leaving me, and this was so fun. They've left me little origami horses all around the library, and they're like, "Well, how many have you found now, Mrs. Herman?" Like it's a little game. But I noticed they were using Post-it notes. Like they were taking a square Post-it note and trying to do origami with it. I'm like, okay, dude, I think we need to get some origami papers out here for you because it's very cute. Friends, I'll put it out on social after you and I finish this conversation. But I'm now very protective of my little origami that my students have made for me. Angela, let's take a minute to give everybody some context. Would you please give us an idea of where in the country you work? Tell us about your current library, what grades you support, the kinds of programs and your teaching schedule.
Okay, so I am in close to Roanoke, Virginia. So it's in Botetourt, looks like Botetourt County. We're in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, the western part of the state. So when you think of Virginia, it's very diverse. So we're in I think the most beautiful part. I'm 6 through 8. And so I've been in education for 26 years, but I've only been in the library for 5. This is my 5th year. So love the path that I've gotten, that I've had, because I feel like my teaching has helped me to be an even better librarian, I hope. My schedule is called Fix Flex. So I have English teachers I see 6th and 7th, I see once a month. 8th, I see once a week because it's the big SOL year in Virginia. So I try to get them in more often. And the other days, I try to get in as many non-English subjects as possible. We do a lot of outreach clubs in the library. And the reason I decided to do that is twofold. One reason is because I had kids come in saying, I'd love if we had this type of club. And we didn't in our school. And another is just because I wanted to bring the heart of the school to the library. So I feel like the more things we're able to offer, the more we have a spotlight on our importance. So we have a book club, an anime manga, a maker space, a chess, now a sewing. I also do one called the Glebe, which I'll talk a little bit more later. And a big program we do school-wide, but mainly with 8th grade, called the Amazing Shake. So that's kind of, I guess, a nutshell of what the day looks like. I usually teach 3 out of 4 blocks a day. My schedule usually looks like the teachers that I have. So if I'm on 8th grade, I'll have 2nd block planning. So I do always try to allot myself a planning block. And it's never quiet. Like, it's not like, as you are very much aware, and every librarian throughout the world is, it just allows me to do the library things. So I never get anything done at school, which I know everybody knows that feeling too, teachers and librarians. So that's kind of what a day looks like for me.
I'm so glad you mentioned the clubs that you offer. Friends, it's not unusual for me to see Angela post on Twitter. Do you also post on Instagram? I'm just curious because I know people are always looking to build that virtual PLN.
Yes, I do Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And mainly Facebook for parents, Instagram for kids, and then Twitter for the networking.
Yes. So friends, we'll make sure to share Angela's, social media, because it really does help me, because when you talk about some of these things, I'm like, I can totally get that visual, because when you do share out, especially on library Twitter, congratulations, Teacher of the Year. Would you let us know about this distinction? I'd love to know more about what caught the eye of the award committee, because when librarians get this, I see it as a double win. Like, it's a win for you, and it's also a win for librarians everywhere, because it's when your school community writ large and the teaching professionals in your building who are not librarians step back and recognize the outstanding efforts of a librarian in their school and recognize the incredible value that you bring. So please let us know, what is it this year that made people stand up and say, hey, Angela deserves this?
Well, the cool thing about it, this is the first year Vita Tut's ever done it. So this to me was like, I felt, I guess, like shouted from the rooftops for librarians, because I feel like this is probably, of all the things I've accomplished, this is by far one that makes me the happiest, because it helps shed light on the fact that librarians are teachers. So in the state of Virginia, we had a school teacher of the year and then a county teacher of the year. And then we had a region teacher of the year. Well, I told my principal, and you have to fill out a ridiculous amount of paperwork when you go past the county to the region. And I told her, I said, it would be fantastic. There's just no way, because there's only 8, But it was. And the cool thing is, not only was I one of the region for Region 6, we had another librarian that was also a region teacher of the year. So that in itself is, I feel like, just great for our whole state and all the librarians that we have, throughout the country and the world, because it's shedding light on the fact that we are teachers too. And another cool thing is they did the first Roanoke Regional Chamber Teacher of the Region. And I was able to add that to my accolades. And again, not like, oh, yay, look at me, I'm so great. But the fact that, again, it's a librarian, so a teacher librarian. So that makes me like so happy. And I think bottom line, I was telling my teacher assistant, my library assistant this on Friday, is I don't want anybody to ever think, oh, she's this or she's that. I just want, like, it boils down to two things. It's basically, I work hard. And I'm also very passionate about what I do and about the kids in our school. And I think all of that, and I know that's, if you're in this profession, you love kids. I mean, you have to, because especially in our space, it's a constant period. So I feel like that it was just a happy storm this year. I've been very, very blessed. God has blessed me beyond measure to be able to do what I love and to have a platform. So I'm hoping that I get to use the platform for good things. Like, I don't really want, like, it's great to say, oh, I was this and I was that, but I want to be able to use it for good, to have a voice in things that matter. So that's my prayer, is that those things will open up in the future.
Well, and I think you speak to this kind of impact, the potential that we have to impact every single person in our school community. And it is such an opportunity. And if we don't take advantage of that, we're wasting this. And
Yes.
So when you seize upon this opportunity that we have, this unique opportunity that we have to be that positive, the reason why somebody smiled today. I know that's so like that's like a sticker people put on their laptop. Be the reason why somebody smiles today. But if you embody that, oh my God, that is a game changer. When you recognize that you as school librarian have the opportunity, not only the opportunity, but it's part of our job. Like
Yes.
when I say to people, it's literally part of my job to help you, they look at me like I'm just being polite, and I'm not. And I say it out loud sometimes, because sometimes there are days you really need to remind yourself of what we are here for, because
Yes.
people forget. But, I love that it's such an authentic win for you, because they clearly weren't, just being polite because they had continuously, nominated the same batch of teachers year after year after year. Like, this was an authentic win. Like, somebody looked around and said, we've got to figure out the most valuable person, our MVP, and it happens to be the school librarian. So clearly you are doing so many things right every day. And that validation should lift you on those days that are not so validating.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have to remind myself.
Once upon a time, I had a wall that nobody else could see in my office, and it was my shrine. And when my kiddos drew me a picture, or they wrote me a little note, or a coworker did, I put it up on my shrine, because there were some days, boy, I really needed that affirmation. It really was helpful. So I'm so glad that you got that. I can't think of a better way to celebrate all the hard work that you put into this profession, but also as an educator, because this is not something that you're new to. You've been putting in the work year in and year out. So friends, today's episode, Greatest Hits, Middle School. I'd love to give, establish some ground rules. Let's establish that, for the benefit of not only librarians here in this country, but also outside of the U.S., let's agree that middle school students generally are between the ages of 11 and 14. You've spoken a little bit about your previous years in teaching, but tell us, how long have you been working with middle school students? Because I have found that oftentimes is the case that people who work in middle school have loved working in this age group. I've seen it described on library Facebook as the best of both worlds. But folks who never leave because they absolutely love this age group.
So I think for me, shows that God has a sense of humor. I'm a K-8 multi-subject major. So when my supervising teacher told me I was going to middle school, I was like, oh man, I wasn't really thrilled about that. Like elementary, I was like, yes, because I always knew I would be an elementary school teacher. I just knew that. Well, when I was in middle school placement, my supervising teacher was in a car accident and I was the sub. Like they didn't have anybody in there with me, which was, that was hard. And the group I had was very difficult. So for me, it reaffirmed again, like, oh man, this is not where I'm supposed to be. Then I went to my elementary school placement and I was like, oh, this is great. Well, again, God has a sense of humor. My first job was 7th grade, science, math, critical thinking, which was really funny because I don't consider myself to be any kind of math science expert in any means. Like I will learn whatever I need to learn and try to present it in the best way I can for kiddos, but I'm definitely more history English. But I've been in middle school ever since. And I do think it goes back to what a mess I was in middle school. I thought I was really funny. And I decided on like my accolade in 8th grade was I was class clown. So if that tells you anything, that might not be all you need to know. So I think for me, it just reaffirms like how much struggle like I personally went through. And I think all middle schoolers do, like your sense of self, like when you're in 6th grade, you're so little and you're trying to figure it out. And then by 8th grade, you have figured it out, or you think, you are good at acting like you have, and just all the transition. So I think that it's a perfect place for me. I do love them. You have to be somewhat, I think, a little crazy to work with them too, but it's a roller coaster ride, but the best roller coaster ride that you could ever have. Like, it's just phenomenal. And I still think that the impact you can have I personally think it's the strongest impact because it's where they're going through the greatest change and they need the most support. And so many of them, like especially since COVID, like our mental health, it is just, I see it day in and day out. And we're very suburban, I would say suburban/rural. We're right outside Roanoke. So we're middle to lower class, I guess, as far as our socioeconomic grouping goes. But it has been astonishing in a bad way to see, all kids. Like you can no longer stereotype the group that's going to struggle because they're all struggling in some way, some obviously more than others. So I feel like that it is, for anybody out there that's thinking about is middle school for me, and I try to tell my son this too because he's going into teaching, don't give up on middle school because it's my favorite. Like, I would not, even if I had a choice to go anywhere else, I would. This is where I'm going to retire, I hope.
I love your trial by fire story. I think that's fantastic. So many librarians have sort of come to where they are out of circumstances that really are outside of their control. But the decision for you to own it and to be like, nope, you know what? Here I am. And there are so many compelling reasons to stay and love what I do. And so I love that, it's not unusual for people to find themselves doing or being in a school situation because somebody else dropped off the radar and all of a sudden you are here. And when you talk about making something work because you've had to learn it, yes. I think librarians can identify with that feeling every day. It doesn't matter what you teach, which grade level you teach. We are oftentimes in the situation of having to be learner first. I've considered my superpower to be my infinite capacity for curiosity. Like, I legit want to learn all the time, which happens. Good thing.
It's wonderful.
Because my goodness, all too often we find ourselves in those situations where you're like, you know what? I'm going to have to get back to you because I have to learn this first.
Yes.
And that's okay.
They like that. They like when you don't know.
Well, and I think that it's never a bad idea. My new strategy, for me at least, my strategy with my high schoolers is to come at this saying, listen, your teacher gave me your assignment, so I did it yesterday, and I made a whole lot of mistakes, and I'm going to show you what not to do. So all of a sudden they're like,
great.
Well, that's very honest. And I'm like, yep, completely honest, because I did this assignment. I'm like, yep, I wasted a whole bunch of time doing it too. So, I think that's an important perspective, especially for those of us who have never taught middle school. And friends, I think I've been rather candid. I tried. I interviewed for a middle school position, and I will never forget this because this individual, and I had to drive a long ways to go to this interview. And the first thing the administrator did, they looked at my resume and said, yeah, I see that you've got, 6 years of teaching high school. Why do you want to teach middle school? And I'm like, I'm looking for a job. I need a job. I'm certified, I'm certified secondary. And this is when I taught social studies, secondary social studies. And they're like, well, why do you want this job? And I'm like, I need a job. I was like, I don't know what to tell you.
I need to eat.
I was like, I need health insurance. To our friends who live in states where the health insurance is not something that comes with a job. It's just something that's national.
I can't imagine.
To our friends with national health care, we are all very jealous, but whatever.
Yes, we are.
On some level, there are decisions that I've had to make because in our, family dynamic, I'm the one who's provided the health insurance. And so that's a reality for many people. But in my 20 years as an educator, I have managed to leapfrog over middle school. So I truly appreciate Angela coming with her expertise today. And I also know that there are listeners who are considering a move to middle school. We're going into interview season, and I want to be able to provide content for individuals who are not only currently in middle school and love being there, but also people who would consider an opportunity to transition from what they currently teach to an opportunity that might be opening up this coming summer during when those jobs and that job shuffle sort of happens. So thank you so much for coming, because I think there are a lot of people who would be grateful to hear from you, somebody who has invested as much time. Because what I've noticed, and I don't know if I'm wrong about this, but middle school, it isn't just older elementary students. They're not just young high school students. There's something very significant about how special this time is while these students are in something of an academy. They're in if you can have them in a separate building, they're not always the case. Sometimes, we're in a one building situation, or our middle schoolers are grouped with our high schoolers. This group of students require a certain amount of attention that is different than our littles and different than our young adults who've got one foot out the door ready to tackle the world.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that some people would be surprised about with middle school is the fact that they just, and I don't think this is different than any kid, they just want somebody to see them. And I think that what happens oftentimes, and I tell them this very frequently, we do a big unit in February on empathy and the difference between sympathy and empathy, and the fact that middle school is such a journey for a lot of people, and you never know what the person beside of you, what their journey is. So it's important for you to be empathetic because we're all trying to find our way. So I think that's the key thing to remember about middle schoolers is one day they'll come in, like I get so tickled. We have Kiva planks and Legos. And the kids, like I've got these, and it's mainly boys, they want to build them as tall as they can build them in the library. And I let them do that if I don't have a class like that at that time. And they always want me to take a picture. And they always think the picture's going to go on social media. And I thought, in 5 years, you're going to be like, no way, Jose. Like they would never want to do. So it's just kind of like they're still little kids at heart a lot of the time. And they just want you to see them. So I hope that they always, like my goal for them is that when they come through the door, I always want them to feel like they're seen and that they always have a safe space. So that's really important to me. So that's why we do a lot of the clubs and we add books, and I tell them a lot of the time too about mirror and window books. And we do that, frequently as well, just to mention that you have to have a mirror book in this space. And if you don't, the only person, the only way we can fix that is you've got to tell me, so I can add one for you, because it's important that you see yourself. And why is that important? It's very figurative. So they're having to dig deep. But so we don't, and the bottom line is so you don't think it's just you. And I think like whether it's like your parents are going through a divorce, or maybe your best friend is very dramatic, or, you feel like you're too short or too tall, or, all the things. So I think that's the main thing, the blessing that we have as, librarians in general, but just as middle school librarians, is the fact that we can give them that extra support when they're going through a very turbulent time. Because I know I was very insecure and was looking for, just looking for like who I was. So I feel like that's that's the beauty of the library. I feel like we have the best job in the world. One of my friends told me before I got into this role, because people ask, well, because I know you've heard this time and time again, they're confused about what you do exactly. You just are the keeper of the books, right? That's been a mission that I feel like I'm personally on, is I'm changing that. Like, I'm not the keeper of the books. Like, I would love for our kids to read and read and read, but that's not the reason I want them to come through the door. Like, I don't want it to be just for readers. So she said, this is the best job because you're like grandma. You get to play with them and you get to send them home. And I thought, oh man, that is exactly right. So one thing, I guess, that struck a chord with me, and I feel like I'm on a movement with this new platform I have, is I had another librarian from another area that said she was surprised that a librarian could get these accolades. And I, of course, was a little bit aggravated at the comment because she said, teachers should not be able to get those accolades unless they teach an SOL class and you give SOL tests. I know. And I said, oh man, if I could just have a sit down. But I have done all the things. So I feel like I've given all the tests. I've graded all the, like, I've done all the things. So I feel like I now am in charge of like all the SOLs. Like, I'm here to support you for all of the things. So that is disheartening, but I know not new information to a lot of us that do this job. So in a roundabout way, I feel like we've got a beautiful platform to change that.
Angela, for the benefit of all our listening community, could you clarify what SOLs are?
There are standards of learning. So we, just like every state has, we have them K through 12, and they're tested. In Virginia, it's changed the last couple of years, but we are tested 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, high school, I'm not for sure. Like, I think every grade, because they have to pass the SOL to get the credit for some courses. But in middle school, we do English, math, 6, 7, 8. And then 8th, they do all the subjects. So, yeah, that's just our content competency, if you will. Minimum standards is what it's supposed to be.
Right. And, I think that it's so frustrating when our value is pinned to an assessment, something that's data driven, and something that can be, attributed directly to a performance on a standardized assessment. I know in my current world, we talk about SLOs, which are student learning objectives. So, and you've got this like alphabet soup, which sort of, drives, I know in the IB episode that I recently did, we talk about our ATLs, approach to learning. And, and on some level, you're just like, it's all the alphabet. Yes. But I love all the things that you're talking about. First of all, you talk about the importance of the windows and mirrors. And I will speak to, just as an adult interviewing in a building, I was able to take a tour, albeit brief, through the space. And it was hard because I still had to go to my interview, but I was guided through the library first to sort of get a visual of what this space would be. And it's really heart wrenching when you're like, if I don't nail this interview, I'm never going to see this space again. But when you think about the messaging that we have the ability to convey to people who simply walk through our space, and that messaging is enough for people to form decisions about how they feel about us as the person in charge. I remember walking through my space and I looked at all the books that were on top of the displays. Like, it's harder when you're looking at the shelves, but you look at the displays that have been left up over the summer. I knew in an instant that, I was looking at a place where I could feel comfortable. I could feel safe in making some of those purchasing decisions that so many people are on the fence about. But looking at the purchases made by my predecessor, I could instantly get a feel for what this building would be receptive to. number one. It's also when you realize in putting out these displays, I realize for some of us, we love doing displays and some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
And, but when you recognize it's an opportunity for us to create that culture in that space. I put out on Twitter this week, it was comical. We hosted Solo and Ensemble, which are a series of competitions for musicians, and the students come, they play either a solo or they play in a group, and they have somebody who judges their performance, and they get little ribbons. And it's very important because I know my children participated in it and it was really fun, but the schools hosted and our school hosted. So we had, imagine all the band directors from the entire county coming to one space and all their students coming to one space. And my space was the judge. It's where the judges all tabulated the results, and all the scorekeeping was happening. And it was a wonderful opportunity to showcase my space. Oh, yeah. But my band director got back to me over the weekend and he's like, hey, he goes, I'm not, I'll connect you with this band director. But it was a little interesting because here is a librarian reaching out to a band director from another school in the county because they wanted to see something that I had displayed in my learning space because it had created a culture of welcome and acceptance.
Oh, that's awesome.
And friends, I'll post it in the show notes. I posted it this week on Twitter, but it's sort of an invitation created by Martha Bongiorno of Georgia. And it's about pronunciation of names and how we want to make sure that we get your name right. And this band director from, miles and miles away from my school said, I was in your library and I could already tell what a wonderful space this is.
That's awesome.
And I was like, oh my gosh, we have that power.
Yes.
That's huge. Yes. That's wonderful. And I love that when you talk about the things you were doing, it reminded me, like my first year in my building, I was on a campaign of kindness, which meant if whatever I could do to reach out and make sure people knew that I was a kind person, that I was a welcoming person, an invitation to work with me. It was my campaign. And I think if we look at our efforts as campaigns, this is an intentional effort on my part to exercise this kind of invitation to my team, to my teachers, to my students. It is not unlike a political campaign where it's very intentional. You channel that energy, in this case, money, towards an effort. And is it self-serving? Sure. Because I want a job next year.
Absolutely. But I think it's important. You want to make those connections. And my principal, I told her one day, I was like, man, I wish, because I think as society as a whole, our reading is down. And it does make me sad. I see maybe 3 years ago, our circulation, I always look at our numbers. Well, it's down. And I don't think it's anything that we are doing or are not doing. I think it's just societal, if you will. I am still doing all the same things, and I'm always striving to do more to raise, the platform rating's important and, how many benefits there are. But my principal did I was just voicing this to her, and she said, but you've got to remember what you're creating now is going to have a lifelong impact because you're making them have a relationship with books. Even if they don't actually physically pick one up, you've made this space and they feel happy and loved here. And so that will, in essence, maybe you won't see it next year or 3 years from now, but they're going to literacy and that feeling and the books, all the things, that's positive. And that's what you want. So I think that I have to remind myself of that too. I know it's easy to be like, oh man, we didn't check out as many books this month, but, and that is a goal, obviously, that we always have. But, I'll try to always remember that too, that it's how many people came through these doors, how many people, were impacted by what we're doing. And like you said, it could be a display, or it could be a Rubik's Cube, or it could be water painting, or the guinea pigs, or any of the things. But, bottom line, you just want them to have that positive interaction, I guess, with your space.
You made me think of something that I know our teachers do, especially at the elementary level, and that's called a vertical meeting, where you're going to look at a subject matter and meet with everybody who teaches that subject up through the school. So all the math teachers, are going to, anybody who teaches math, we're going to talk to, and for the high school, it's a little bit different, but vertical is when you start, this was certainly an opportunity for our elementary and middle school teachers to get together and how do we teach math? All right. Our middle school and elementary teachers getting together. How do we teach ELA? And, providing that continuity of service. And it makes me think that we should be meeting with our, the schools that feed us.
Oh, yes.
All right. So you should, as the middle school librarian, be regularly connecting with the librarians whose programs feed yours, because you want to provide that continuity of service. Because if the students were reading these kinds of books in elementary school and then to come to middle school and not see anything familiar.
Yes.
It's very sort of, I know when I was giving my freshman orientation at the high school, I already knew that my collection was going to be a disappointment for so many reasons, but especially because I was cognizant there were very few books that you would have seen overlap with the middle school collection. And I think that when you create your collections, you do need to be aware of the clientele that's coming in.
Yeah.
And be able to support some of that, because you're going to have those readers for whom they're not, transitioning. You don't get to just jump into a new grade level or age group of reading. And some of our students are going to cling to some of those titles that are familiar and feel are, they're comfortable.
Diary of a Wimpy Kid, for example. Dork Diaries.
Angela has graciously agreed to join us for an important conversation, I feel, that gives the attention to the middle school. And I'd love to hear what some of these home runs are when it comes to what you do as a middle school librarian. Because if I was sitting in an interview for a middle school position, what are the kinds of things that you can tell me, given the years of experience you have had working with middle schoolers? What are the surefire home runs that are going to be ones that resonate with middle schoolers?
Well, I think the first one, like I've mentioned already, is, and this has been work in progress. So I think I say all of these things to, I have a good friend of mine. She is first year librarian, has been a teacher for a long time. She's a first year librarian at the neighboring middle school. And so we meet, and I told her advice I wish somebody would have told me. You can't do it all overnight, because I'm definitely that person. I want to do it all yesterday. So I think the first thing I think for me is just to look at the space and think about the temperament of middle schoolers. We have gotten to the point that teachers are telling their kids that the library is closed, so they do not want to come during the day, which makes me that makes my heart extraordinarily happy, and it's comical, because one of the kids the other day was like, "Miss Myers, do you close the library for A?" I said, we never close the library unless one of us is out and it's an emergency, but it very rarely ever happens. And they were like, "Well, Mr. So-and-so said you were closed for A." And I just started to laugh. I was like, well, okay. So I think the first thing is to look at your clientele and make them, field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. So I think just make it the heart of the school. What is going to pull those kids to your space? And I think, you definitely want to have the books. You want to make sure that you have, you've talked about, things that they're comfortable with, but things that will expand their reading as well. But you've also got to figure out too, for your non-readers, and that population, unfortunately, is getting larger in our schools. The kids that just want to read what they have to read, and that's it. How are you going to get them through the door? So I think the first thing, the home run, I think the biggest thing for me is just to make that, I want that to be the heart, the pulse. And I want when, the principal shows people around the school, that's the first place that they come. That's my goal. So I think that would be a home run, first of all. I think another thing is just the passive programming. That has been a game changer for me, because the kids want to come for all those reasons. Like if you ask the kids, why do you want to go to the library? And they always put, because we have e-hall pass, which is like, it's great because it allows us to approve and it sees how long they're there and whatnot, which we hadn't had anything like that prior. So this makes it more standardized and you can see where everybody is. So we just got that this year, but you get to see in the their little subject bubble why you're coming. And a lot of them will say book because they know that the teacher's not going to let them out unless they do say book. But some of them will say, like one kid said, it's just been a bad day. I need to pet the guinea pig. Or I just want to go color. So I think the passive programming for me has been, it's changed the space. Like we have, and I know I've talked to this before, but I have, 6, 7, and 8. It's definitely different levels of energy. So 6th grade comes in and it's like, I always tell them, I taught 6th grade for years and years. I was like, don't run, because that screams to everybody else in the school, I am in the 6th grade. And they're like, Miss Part, like they just can't help it. They just have to run everywhere. So we have exercise bikes for the energy. So in the mornings, you'll see like the 8th graders might be working the puzzle, and the 6th graders are like on the bikes, like, just as fast as they can go. And other kids are over, looking in on the bearded dragon, and some kids are holding the guinea pig. So I feel like the passive programming, like in the morning, our space, I don't want to say it's a zoo because that is a bad connotation. It's very busy. And Friday, one of the kids came in and said, Miss Mars, nobody's here. What's going on? And I said, it's just 8:22. We've only been in school for 2 minutes. So again, you want them to come. So I feel like put the things out. And I realized too, and that can be frustrating. Like we have these massive collaborative coloring sheets. And we put one out and we had some kids that were just scribbling through it. And I'm sure it was just 1 or 2, just scribbling. And some of the other kids were just very frustrated. Like, why is somebody ruining this? We're all trying to do this together. So I feel like don't grow disheartened, because some of the things you put out, unfortunately, will get used inappropriately. But the bigger picture is most of the kids are going to appreciate it. And if you take it away, which I know I've seen you've had to do that, I think they will, like with the coloring sheet, I had to move it and we had to take one up and they're like, what happened? And I said, well, somebody's writing on it, and that's just very frustrating. And now they're almost self-policing each other, which is wonderful. So I'm hoping that continues. But we did put the coloring station a little closer to us too.
Well, and you do have to, Angela is referencing, I believe, I put out a sign because we have booths, which unfortunately make you feel like you're at McDonald's. And unfortunately, it's the most popular space, but it's also a blind spot for me. Like, you want to take the furthest space from where I sort of situate myself, because like many people, I situate myself by the door because I am a very overpaid bouncer. And
Yes.
In my space, I am paid a great deal of money to regulate who comes in and out of the space. And when we're missing somebody, you better believe that for a while they were all checking with me, but then they quickly realized, people don't get in without me, stopping and it's the Grand Inquisition. But part of the reason is that teachers need to know that you are there to support. You're a partner in learning. But, I think that what was referenced was I put out a sign that said, the lounge is closed today. Thank your friends who trashed it yesterday. And this also, unfortunately, speaks to the reality that we have a shortage of custodial staff.
Yes.
And so the fact is our space does not get cleaned on a daily basis. And I'm not saying that, I'm above, getting the vacuum out, but we're in a union. And so if I get out the vacuum, all of a sudden the message is that we don't need the custodial staff that we have, because apparently the librarian is perfectly happy vacuuming her space. And I was caught using some Windex on one of our windows because the kids, of course, had left all these kissy faces on it. And I started cleaning. All I did was clean a window pane. And somebody's like, the custodians are not going to like you when they see you doing that. And I'm like, well, well, it's my space. I want to look at it. But, I love this sense of this 3-ring circus, when you have so many activities going on at once, you are the ringleader. You have made this possible. You have created this invitation for students to come in, and it's no less valuable a space because they're in there using the exercise bikes. Trust me, that next hour, that class teacher is going to appreciate that they got those, they got that energy out of them, and this menagerie that you've created as well. You have the bearded dragon, you have the guinea pigs. It is so important. I know for us, we're very fortunate because our social worker has a therapy dog. And so on Mondays and Fridays, the students know that our social worker has brought their therapy dog in with them to work with our students. Tell us about the e-hall pass, because I have nothing like it. For me, it's a Google form and students sign in. So tell us, I know somebody is going to be like, what's an e-hall pass? So please tell us.
Well, I think it's a rather expensive system, but I think it's been a game changer for our school. So basically, it's just a systematic, a platform, and the kids have to create their passes. The passes have to get approved. They're only like 8th and 7th are only supposed to use certain bathrooms. 6th grade's only, so they're only allotted. So 6th grade can only have access to certain areas of the school, and that's all controlled within the hall pass. And so you have when a kid's name pops up, so we can see everybody's in the school, we can approve it, or I don't know if there's a decline button or not. Miss Bettner and I were trying to figure that out on Friday because we're all kind of still learning. The only way a student would be declined is if we have a class. So every week I always I send out a weekly newsletter. So I tell the teachers, which classes I'm working with. And they know if it's 8th grade, I would have second block planning. Most everybody knows kind of winter-based planning is and so forth. So the only way a student would be denied is if, we have a class and we're trying to focus in and let them use the space, and we don't need, 20 extra kids in there during that time. So we also are able to note when they've arrived and when they're returning, which is great because we would have kids, middle school, and I'm sure high school, this would definitely be an issue too. I'm going to the library and you come back and you're 25 minutes. Well, have they been there the whole time? So my library assistant, Mrs. Bettner, she does a phenomenal job helping me with that because it does get very busy, especially 4th block when people sometimes finish their work. We have, she'll help me to note, they've arrived, they're returning. So we try to keep it, it'll give us a notification if they've been in there for 10 minutes or more, which is wonderful too. And we've kind of made that our cutoff. So we're like, hey, so-and-so, you've been in here for 10 minutes. We've loved seeing you today, but you need to go ahead and head back to class so the next person can come. So some teachers will allow 1 student, some teachers 3. That's been kind of a hard thing for me because my principal, Mrs. Harris, has asked me, hey, how, do you want to start limiting the number of kids that can come? And I've never told her an answer for that because I feel like if it gets to be too many, we always have the power to say, you need to head back to class. We've got a lot of stuff going on. You can come back tomorrow or come back, 4th block or whatever. So it's just a platform, I think, that really helps everybody in the school be on the same page because some kids, we used to have a paper agenda and you'd have to fill it out, which was a pain because the teacher would have to take it to the teacher. They'd, all the things. And now it's just, it seems to be working really well. It's also helped us to be able to see, if so-and-so is out of class at this time and there's something that happens in the hallway or in the bathroom, you've got some, data to back that up. So I like it a lot. We don't have, I know the high school librarian, I don't think they use the e-hall pass system. They do a Google form too. So I know she monitors it a little bit differently. But for us, it's good. We, we're still learning because we've only had it since the beginning of the year, but I like it. I don't know how much it is, but I think it's been a good investment for our school system, for our school.
So you mentioned that you do a lot of teaching, and, tell me, because when you're in those opportunities, are you co-teaching? What are some lessons that your middle school teachers find that it is so, invaluable to bring you in to help them? What are the kinds of things that you're doing when it comes to collaborating with middle school teachers?
Well, I think that me being in our school for all the years that I was has helped me, because that foundation was already laid, which was great. So I feel like people knew what kind of classroom teacher I was. And so therefore, when I went into this space, I didn't have any pushback, because I was talking to my friend and she was like, how do you get people to come in here? And my biggest problem right now, and this might be something that our listeners and you can help me with too, I have a fixed flex schedule. So what that means is I have all of my English teachers come one time a month and I plan the lesson. So what I do is I'll say, hey, here's what I had in mind. See what you think about this. We can always make some changes. And I kind of know what they're working on based on the fact that I've done it for quite some time already. So the first year, we kind of find our way, but I usually come up with the plan. And I'll do, we usually start out with, I'll do a book talk, library announcements, and then we always do checkout at the beginning. And we call it checkout and enjoy the space. And then I'll sound a little bell and they come back over and we'll start the activity. So that's kind of like how it normally works as far as our time goes. 8th grade comes one time every week. And so I see all the 8th grade kids, which is kind of cool because it allows me to get to know them a little bit better. And I really like that. So usually what I do is I send the lesson and the teacher is on deck, but I'm kind of doing it all, if that makes sense. So it is more of they're coming to my classroom. Now, I do have math and science that come as well. And when they come, it's a little bit more of a co-teaching situation. But my problem right now, and this is where you might have some advice, is I have no open spaces. So my month looks like every day is full. And I did have a couple of days that were open. I've tried to do this different ways because I give every class a whole block. I tried to do it 45, and one teacher would come, and that was tough. That's me every Friday. I teach 6 classes on Friday, so 6 skinnies. And it's hard, but it would allow me to get more people in. But I think because our teachers are so used to this system, they're going to be frustrated if I try to change it for next year. But my problem is, and it's not a problem, because a lot of librarians would beg for this problem. I have more than enough. I'm teaching all the time, which is what I want. Because if I'm not teaching, I'm like, what's going on today? But I don't have enough open spaces. So one teacher came to me and said, I want to come in here, but I can't get in here. You don't have any openings. And I'm like, oh, that makes my heart hurt, because I can make things. And I send this out in the weekly newsletter too. I will do whatever you need me to do. I'm always here. Please tell me how I can help. But people want to be in the space to enjoy. So with my math teachers, that's always my goal every year, is how can I get the non-English classes in more? And it's a struggle. I don't know what the answer is, because I last year left it up to the teachers, and that ended up I had some teachers in there 2 days a month. And so this year I said, well, I'm just going to make it this way. So I'll have a couple of openings for other subject areas, because I don't want the library to be the English classroom, and I know it lends itself more, but we have the maker space. And so it was funny because I had 6th grade math in there, and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to the library. That's awesome. Because they don't really get to come that frequently. They come with their English, but not with their math. So I'm trying to work, but there's just not enough days in the month. Like this month is very challenging. Next month we have spring break. So do you have any advice for that? Like, I don't know. I want to be, well, and this is one of my biggest character flaws. I want to be everything to everybody. You know, I want to help everybody. And the reality is I can't, but they know all the things we have. Like we have all the books to support their curriculum. We have the makerspace. Like, I don't think anybody in our school would be like, I don't know what we have in the library. You know, like, I don't think that's the thing. But I think when they have the opportunity to come in, it helps them to see it. You know, until you can see it and you've actually experienced it, you don't really know. You know, but you don't know, if that makes sense.
It's a good problem to have because, people will walk by my space and for some reason, we'd gone from, everybody, all our spaces were being used and somebody walks by and the classes haven't come down yet. Or, teachers are just gearing up for final exams. So, teachers aren't coming down. And the unfortunate concern is that people think that if there's nobody in the Learning Commons, then I'm not doing anything. So understand you've got a good problem on your hands. And I think the only thing you can possibly do, and this might, it sounds like your assistant is full time, which is good. So, extending the invitation for teachers to bring their students into the space, but not to use you. And so you can, for us, many times they're using the space that we have because they need the collaborative spaces. They need the spaces with the moving furniture. And so sometimes the space sells itself because we have little collaboration stations that our teachers can do, or when students are giving presentations, we have those 6 collaboration stations. But, when you are already clearly teaching another class, you cannot be expected to possibly come over here and now engage with this group. So I think the message is, as long as the teachers are coming with their students down to your space, whether it's makerspace or they're coming down for some of your passive programming, if you can afford that, to have that 3-ring circus continue and have another teacher in that space, be the person who makes that possible. Make sure that the messaging coming from you is, that sounds great, but you're going to need to be with the students when that happens. This isn't like you can drop them off. I have had the situation where it was very clear that the teachers were sending down more than half their students. And at that point, I kind of said, forgive me, how many kids are in class today? Because I'm counting 16 down here right now. Is there anybody left in your room? Because, and I hate to be that person, but I kind of have to, because there are other things going on. So when you are teaching all your programs, are your teachers having you support activities that they're doing in the classes? Are these standalone lessons? Can you give us some idea of what are some of those lessons that you're teaching? Because it sounds like it's a very big part of your job.
Oh, yeah. So I think that, it mainly is it's always focused in on back to the standards of learning. So what I try to do is utilize the fact that we have so much space, which is great. So we'll oftentimes do stations or breakout rooms, things that I try to make just ours. Is we do one thing. I think one of my favorite lessons is the empathy. So I feel like that the platform that I have, because I get to see every single kid in the school, we always do the empathy lesson. So the empathy lesson, I always try to do it around Christmas time, because that seems to be when we're more in that spirit. And we do a community outreach with the rescue mission. And so the rescue mission is a local organization that helps people, meet needs that are a little bit down on their luck. So they give housing, kind of overnight housing, and help people with addiction and to be fed and medical care and whatnot. So we talk about the power of empathy, and we learn about the topic of homelessness through both fiction and nonfiction text. So I always try to make sure everything we do goes back to text, so they will understand the importance of, we've gotten these skills from literacy. I guess the really eye-opening thing, especially this year, is we have homeless students in our school. And that has not been something that I think has been an issue prior. So a couple of times I've done this lesson, because I do this same lesson with 6th and 7th with it differentiated a little bit as far as the end result. I have said to the teachers, please let me know if this topic, they can see everything we're planning to do. And with one group, I had to change it around a little bit. And the other group, I was able to deliver it just fine. But that was eye-opening for me to know that topic is something that's going to hit very close to home for our kids. But afterwards, we do like a placemat or a caring card. So a placemat is, something that we can give to the rescue mission, and they put them down where the people will eat. And it's just a message of encouragement. And a caring card, like a note card, that would basically say, thinking of you, or, a Bible verse or an uplifting quote they can put in their pocket. I feel like that's one I really, really like. We also have done these 2 projects, which I really like. We try to do a lot of research because unfortunately in the classroom, they're oftentimes not given the opportunities to, just for time, the research. So we do Where in the World, which the kids love. We do the 6th grade. So kind of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. And I never dreamt how much the kids would love this. I thought, well, we can do a little bit of, like learning about countries and geography and research and just the process. And we presented some of these this past week, and I've got this Amazon microphone. Now this is 6th grade. So you got the 7th grade population is a little bit different. They're not all about the microphone, but they stood up in front of the class and they did their Google slide presentation, and they have to have like 6 to 8 clues. And then they have a pause slide and then a reveal, like where are they? And some of the kids are like, I never even knew this was a country. So that's been, really cool too. And another one we do is Who Am I? So for 6th grade, we do Where in the World. 7th grade, we do Who Am I? And the Who Am I, they get to, we try to make sure, which as we know, there are a lot of Netflix series who are they give a lot of notoriety to some people that don't deserve it. and I'm very much fans of those series as well. But I told the kids, we have to make sure that who we're choosing has had a positive impact on our world in some way. Some are like, oh man, I wanted to do Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer. And I'm like, I realize the fascination, but it's not really, what we want to kind of put out into the world, especially take our time in this space. Another one we do, I'm probably giving you too much information.
No, I'll tell you what, I know there are people taking notes, but I did want to ask you, because you said something that caught my ear. You said of the teachers, they know everything we're going to do. Tell us a little bit about that piece, because how do the teachers know what you're going to do with your students? Do you have a lineup? Do you have something that you post? Tell me a little bit about that.
So at the beginning of the year, I make a calendar, and I do it paper, pencil, and Google Calendar, and I make a copy for the teachers. So they have access to the Google Calendar plus the hard copy, and print that and send it to everybody in their box. So they all know when they're coming. And then the week before they come, preferably on Friday, but sometimes it doesn't happen till Saturday, I'll say, hey, you guys are scheduled to come to the library this day. Here's what I'm thinking. Here's our proposed plan. Let me know your thoughts. And usually they'll come back with, that sounds great. So it's just like their lesson plan for the class. So I'll put in it like, and it's not anything, my lesson plans, I know some people do them. I used to do them like Google Doc collection. Now I do like an email collection. So I keep a book of all my emails, but it's pretty much like, step 1, we do this. Step 2, we do this. And I'll always include all the resources they'll need. I have a library canvas because that's the platform we use. What I usually do is I'll send the like whatever we need. So say like if we're doing the Who Am I, we use a Wakelet with all the resources. Wakelet's great if you've, I know a lot of people out there have used it. So I'll share it with them and they post it on their canvas. So they know, like the kids sometimes will say, is it on your canvas, Miss Myers, or Miss Graham's? And I'll say, well, I shared it, it'll be on hers, because I don't have classes in my canvas because I've got the whole school. So that's kind of, what it looks like. One of the coolest projects we've ever done. My 8th grade advanced English, I have a teacher, she comes in every Wednesday and she's got 4 skinny blacks. And so we started this, it's a spooky story collaboration. It's the coolest thing, one of the coolest things we do. So we start the kids out with a picture and everybody, and this is a collaborative project. So they're in like groups of 2 to 3. So they start out with a picture. And it's usually like, well, it's a spooky picture, if you will, like kind of looks like maybe an asylum or an old abandoned house, and then they go through and write all of the, have to use all the senses. So they make a very strong imagery platform. Then they go to the brainstorm, then they write the story, and then we do, how are you going to present? And we give them a menu option, a podcast, dramatic reading, Google slide presentation, iMovie. And that is the coolest. It's really grown. We've done it for, I think this is the 2nd year. But that, like every week, the 8th graders are like, oh, we're in the library today. And they're excited. So that makes me happy because if you get 8th grade excited about anything, that's something to write home about. So that's one of my favorite projects. And that, because 8th graders hate to write, we tried to start doing travel blogs. So, and I can post this on in the show notes too. I had one time I was lucky enough to get to go to Rome for a teacher training because I take kids abroad, and so my ITRT at the moment helped me to come up with this it is crazy good. So I can't take credit for this because he is phenomenally talented. We set up a kind of a travel journal. They were going to travel exactly where I was going to travel. So we just introduced this to the 8th graders this past week because they're getting ready for their writing SOL, which is really tough. It's like multiple choice and then they have a prompt, which writing is just hard in general, but they are really getting involved and like, where are you going today? Where I'm going to the Pantheon, or I'm going to the Coliseum, and they're doing research and they're writing, and they're always worried, are we going to have to present? And not for this one, they won't, but that's been really cool too. So I know that was more than you asked for, but
No, are you kidding? I'm telling you, people tell me when they do email the podcast, it's like, you know what, Amy, I'm taking notes while your guest is talking. I'm like, you're taking notes? I'm taking notes. We're all taking notes. Yes, if you would be so kind as to include, if you wanted to give, you mentioned that you share things with your teachers at the beginning of the year. I'm going to tell you right now, nobody has ever said, Amy, enough with the resources. Your guests are too generous. Said nobody ever about this podcast. So, truly, I imagine there are some either currently middle school librarians or aspirational middle school librarians who would love to be able to build upon the amazing successes that you have had with your program. For those of you who are like, wow, these episodes kind of go a little long, but you know what? If for 1 minute I thought we were wasting somebody's time, I would have cut you off a long time ago. There are so many people who are grateful that you have been able to share as much as you have. You've mentioned your clubs a little bit. Is there any one particular club that you feel really succeeds where other areas of programming may miss those students? Do you have something you'd like to share?
Yeah, we have. We just started a sewing club, and that's a parent volunteer. That's been phenomenal because I don't know how to sew. So I really, really am excited about that one. That one's fairly new, but has been very successful. The one I'm probably we're getting to start it back up. So I started this club. This is the 10th year, and I did this when I taught 6th grade, and it's called the Glebe Club. And it is a club where we get to we do it through 6th grade just because that seems to be the best age for this to happen. But we take our 6th grade students, the ones that apply. So it's an application club. They go to the Glebe retirement community, and which is really close to our school, on like a little field trip during their 3rd block class one time every month. And they go and talk to a resident of the Glebe. And they're about usually 70 plus years old. And this allows our kids, and I did put this in the show notes, it allows our kids to practice speaking and listening and communicating. And they're kind of interviewing. So we always have like a set topic for the month. And then it allows the residents, obviously, to be filled up with the energy of a middle school student. We're starting it the first time because we had to take a break because COVID was the kind of deal breaker for it. So we haven't gotten to do it for, I guess the last time, it was pre-COVID. So 2019 was the last time we got to do it. We are kicking it back off this coming Friday for the first time. It'll be the 10th year. We have 21 residents there and 55 of our kiddos are going. So I'm working on making groups, and that is another thing that to kind of showcase on the library. Like, it's not really a library. It is a library club, and it's not in the sense that, but it allows the library again to kind of go back to being the heart. Like, we're doing something with community outreach. So that's the one I'm probably most passionate about, because it's hard to describe all the benefits for both the kids and the residents that has shown over the years, but that's my favorite.
Aw, it strikes such a chord. I grew up, with the benefit of grandparents, but not everybody does. And I was able to move our family into my house when my mother needed us to be there to take care of her. And multi-generational dynamics are something that is so formative and so lasting. Those lessons that our students learn in a multi-generational household, or an opportunity to have grandparents. For the benefit of everybody listening, please give us some advice about what it takes to be a successful middle school librarian.
Well, I think the first thing, and I've just tried to jot down a couple of things. I think I mentioned this at the beginning, you can't do it all at once. And that is like, when I look back at my first year, this is my 5th year in my space. And some of that was COVID and then hybrid. And then, so I feel like maybe 2.5 years normal. You can't do it all at once. So you need to be able to like figure out maybe one good thing to do every month, one new thing. And if it doesn't work, that's okay, because you've got to give yourself permission to learn. And when I say all these things, I'm preaching to myself more than anybody, because I really struggle with all of this. You've also got to give yourself grace to, if something fails miserably, it's okay. Because there's lots of things like the coloring sheet I spoke to earlier. I was disappointed and frustrated, but I was like, Ange, they're 12. They're at the stage where they're going to do things. And it's not against you personally. It's just they're impulsive. And I think another thing is I would definitely go get involved in your state organization. We're very fortunate in Virginia, and I know a lot of states around the country have really strong organizations. It's a great support. I find I'm still networking with people. Twitter has been a game changer for me because I've been able to get great ideas. Your podcast has been an extraordinary thing. Just attend professional development, listen, just look, because I think librarians are the most giving people, some of the most giving people out there. So if you ask, a lot of the times they'll be like, absolutely. So don't be afraid to ask, because chances are, they will give it to you or help you to come up with it. So I think just networking and giving yourself grace, I think would be the two biggest pieces of advice I can give.
Angela Myers, you are incredible. And I am so grateful that you have been able to join us. Please let us know where we can follow you on social media. I love seeing all the things that you post, and I know other people would benefit as well.
So we have everything. We're pretty much RMMS library. So it's Reed Mountain Middle School Library. So our Twitter is Library RMMS. And all of these will be in the show notes too. Our Facebook is RMMS Library, and our Instagram is RMMS Library. So yeah, that's pretty much where we are. I do have on Twitter my own personal account, and then I have our RMMS Library account. So yeah, I do everything for the library on the library account. So yep, that's where you can find us.
Angela, I'm so grateful. Thank you again. And I hope that you have a fantastic rest of the school year.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure being here.
Friends, be sure to make time for the amazing show notes which Angela has so generously shared with us today. Whether you teach middle school or elementary school or high school, you can be sure that there will be plenty of information, resources, and content which you can find useful in our show notes today. If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. One last friendly reminder, I encourage you to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more using the code UNITED. The topic of our next episode will be developmental bibliotherapy and my conversation with Judith Wakeman. I hope you will tune in.